you ever thought about being in the M&A game, buying and selling business, making money from buying and selling businesses, but you never wanted to manage employees? Well, today my guest is Dennis Mezaritsky, who has been in the M&A Advisor business for about 10 years and done about 70 deals. We're going to talk about what it takes, what it looks like, how much you can make, etc. Let's take a watch of the video. Welcome to Top M&A Entrepreneurs, the show. How are you?
John, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so you're in Concord, Massachusetts, the epicenter of kind of American history. Welcome.
Yeah, I am the American history in the making. Yeah, right here in Concord, Mass. Right here downtown. I'm looking at Colonial Inn, which is a 300-year-old hotel, which is the landmark of downtown Concord. It's only 30 minutes away from Boston.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So, I brought you on to talk about this journey that you had, and I know that you acquired your parents' business. What kind of business was that?
So I have it's a long story, but my dad operated a trucking company, trucking transportation company, and as I was in college, was really on board helping him out with the growth of the company. And then in my senior year of college, I bought my first company and brought him in into that business. So we kind of merged the companies at that point. So it was a wholesale distribution business. So it's a little bit, it's not like my dad owned a 20, 30-year-old company when I came in and acquired it. I grew the company from scratch together with my dad, side by side, which was
okay.
Fantastic.
What were you wholesaling, distributing?
Yeah, so it was a wholesale distribution of produce, fruits and vegetables.
Produce.
Yeah, so we supplied fruits and vegetables to restaurants. So companies like D'Angelo's and Sbarro's and Uno's, like all the big chains. It was almost a 100-year-old company, a third generation business that we acquired with real estate in Massachusetts, and we serviced Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and New England markets. It was an interesting business. I basically acquired it with absolutely zero knowledge, zero understanding of acquisition. I used a broker to acquire the business, and that was my first kind of dips into this world of acquisition, of actually buying a company that was already established, had a great brand and recognition, had a real estate to go along with it, and that's kind of how I set my journey up in the M&A space. And then
what kind of revenue and profits was it doing?
Yeah, so it was about $600,000 in revenue business, maybe a little bit more, closer to $1 million. That was back in 2004, so
that's a long time ago.
It also had a pretty good piece of real estate. We had a warehouse that was about, I'd say, 25,000 square feet, maybe 20. So a good sized business.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
What were the margins on a wholesale distribution business for restaurants? And how many turns did you have per month?
Oh man, produce is so perishable. It's such, like, if you're going into wholesale distribution, produce is really like on the bottom of that list, because by the time you get the product, it has to be sold. Like you really have no time to sell it. You have to sell. You have to act quickly on the product. And the margins, you're looking on the best days at 30%. On average, it's about 27% margins that you're making on the business. So it's tough, all right? And if you have few products that go bad and you got to throw them out, boy, here goes your margins. Especially in the ups and downs of the price market escalation. You go from a box of lettuce costing you $9 a box to $60 a box in the same season, and you go, well, that's insane. So it's a tough business.
Yeah, I have to ask you. I saw a picture of you with John Castamidis, the billionaire.
Yeah,
who had a grocery store in New York called Apple.
Yeah.
I saw that picture of you, noticing that, that's kind of the same business. Yeah.
Yeah. He says that his grocery business is the worst margin and worst business out of the whole portfolio that he owns. He said it was the hardest business to operate. But he started the grocery chain with one store. Like he was he was stocking shelves. I mean, like there's no like bottom up story than this. I mean, he's worth, I don't know, $4+ billion. I mean, he's a significant successful entrepreneur. And he started stocking shelves on the grocery store. I think he grew it to a current 50 stores. Obviously
it was a number of acquisitions too.
Obviously he
grew it.
Yeah. But also, I mean, he went into he acquired partnership. I think the partners were fighting with each other. He stepped in, acquired a partnership, and almost on seller financing, and then and then he grew from there. It's really how it all developed for him.
Yeah,
really fascinating guy.
Hold on one second.
Did you
hold on one second? I'm gonna take the timestamp here because the video is stopping.
Yeah, you froze a bit as well.
I can't tell if it's working or not. All right, so timestamp 5:17. I may have to cut that out. Let me go to how long did you own that business and what did you grow it to?
Yeah, so we bought it, I think, in 2004. I was a senior. I graduated in May. In July, on my birthday, I signed documents at closing table. Literally, you can't make this up. And then 08, 09 came about. 2008, 9 was oh man, that was a tough year.
For people not old enough, there was another crash in 2008, 2009.
Yeah. I forget. People don't remember economy being in the hole, but 08, 09 was a crappy year, and I serviced big corporate clients. Like for example, D'Angelo's, big franchise chains, and Uno's, and Round, and whatever else chains there were, but a lot of them went out of business.
Yikes!
Yeah. And so in the wholesale distribution business, where you also at a bank, because you're holding receivables and you're working on margins that are so thin that you can't afford a spoilage, and all of a sudden you have bankruptcy notices coming in the mail and saying, hey, you can't collect, you got to go back in line. We're restructuring our capital stack, and you're like, holy moly, my receivables are outrageous. Like, how am I going to survive? That was I mean, 08, 09 was a really horrific year, and I got out of that by actually doing another acquisition. So I actually acquired a transportation company. Are you frozen, John? Or
I'm not. I can hear you fine.
Yeah. So I acquired another transportation company. It was the second oldest transportation company in the United States. It had, I think, 4 or 5 digit USDOT number.
Second oldest. What is that? When did it start? When was it founded?
I don't remember when it was formed, but it was second oldest because it was the second DOT number that was issued in the United States.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So and that's how I kind of got out of it. I went from strictly being a wholesale distribution, buying somebody else's product, making a small margin to resell. Now I was doing service. I was providing transportation services. And I also went into school systems and more government contracts where I knew I was going to get paid, and it might be slow, but I was getting paid. So that, that really got me out. And I exited 9 years later. I exited and I started doing M&A full time. I went through 3 different acquisitions.
Did you shut the grocery distribution business down or so?
No. I sold my shares to the partners that were there. Initially when I acquired a company, it was my first acquisition. So everything I could have done wrong, I did.
You did. Low margin business, lots of turns, perishable products.
I mean, I was sleeping, like, you hear Elon Musk sleeping on the manufacturing floor of Tesla. I was sleeping in my office in my produce wholesale business. It was 50 miles away from home as well. So, I mean, it was a very educational period of time for me. So I learned a lot in this space, and all my experience really come from running through walls. I'm not really good, at reading books.
Well, you're not. I think we're the same kindred people here, because I learned through running through the walls and making my own mistakes until finally,
Yeah. Now, you get the aha moment. But I think that's what makes me unique and good in what I do. I mean, I really understand the struggle. I can really see the writing on the wall really early on. just through conversation, and that made me really successful in the M&A space. And I started 10 years ago in April. It was 10 years ago that I started working for the founder of ROI, Gary Rayberg, who founded the company in 1997, and I started working as a broker because I really wanted to learn the M&A business. Right, I'd done through my acquisitions, but really, what else was I not understanding in this business? Like, I wanted to get my next business that I was going to buy. I wanted to be more experienced in the way that the businesses are acquired. So I joined Gary. He was an extraordinary a mentor. I was one of the top producers in his firm, and then he made me partners 3 years in, and now he's semi-retired, working for me part-time while I own 100% of ROI. I transitioned him out of the business as he's now riding in his camper all across the country, enjoying life, doing M&A work part-time and having a phenomenal time. But that's my journey.
Is there a distinction between an M&A advisor and a broker in Massachusetts? Because I've had people tell me there's an M&A advisement. Yeah, it's kind of a gray area. You don't really have a license and stuff. But
it's a wild west out here. I mean, the way that we defined it is we look at the business broker as somebody who is more of a Main Street listing type of agent. So liquor store, convenience stores, pizza joints, something that sells under $1 million. That's kind of what we're seeing. And then the M&A advisors are really the professionals who can help clients that are a little bit too small for investment banking firms, but a little bit more complicated than an average business broker can handle on the Main Street. And there's nothing wrong with either of the sectors. That's just how we separate. And we do both. We have brokers who work on Main Street listings, but the majority of our transactions are M&A space. So really trying to bring those investment banking services to small sized companies that might be a little bit too complicated. Not might be, but they are too complicated and require a lot more hand holding, a lot more analytical work than a typical business broker. So our model here is not to take a listing, post it online, wait for somebody to call. We really gotta work our client.
It's proactive. You're actually reaching out and putting
we got to figure out who are the strategic acquisition targets. What kind of private equity firms will really be looking for this? Is this a platform company? Like we're really breaking all of this down to figure out what exactly going to be the opportunity for our client before.
All right, so I'm going to ask you some numbers here. So some stats. 10 years, how many deals have you done? Yeah, you can say 100% or percentage. I don't know, of the deals, like a tackle. I get
So we
solo tackle, or is it half a tackle?
Yeah. A lot of the deals now in the past 4 years, I'm doing together with my team. Right, there's only so much that I could do, but my team and I will do a lot more together. So that allows me to do more. A lot. When I got started, my deals were $100,000 deals, and I'm not talking about commission. I'm talking about the size of the transactions. So I've accumulated a lot of experience. I'm close to 70 transactions at this point. I mean,
70 transactions.
We've done
cool.
We've done a lot. I've done 12 last year. So we're scaling up. Obviously, now that I'm getting to a little bit larger transaction sizes, that number falls through. But I have a whole team who picks up on that.
Yeah. Cool. And tell me about these M&A transactions. How are you finding these bigger ones?
Yep.
The 2 million EBITDA up.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's being in the industry for a long time, being the reliable, trusted partners for a lot of the CPAs that we work with, a lot of the financial advisors that we work with. Really, we're getting referred into these transactions, and we're really good in first establishing a credible valuation. That's always our step one, really doing a deep analysis of the company and figuring out where the hell are we before we move forward. And that's how we start working with these clients. So some clients that we're going on the market, we've been working with for years now, right? And that might not
they're
be
kind of repeat buyers.
Yeah, so that's why it's really tough. My industry is extremely hard. To just get started in doing business brokerage and M&A advising, because it takes a while to get that cycle going, because it's a very long sales cycle.
Yeah. What is it for a 2 million EBITDA and up company? What's the normal sales cycle for it?
Well, our average is 8 months from the time that we
8
list
months.
to the time that we sell. Last month I had a closing. It took me 6 months. At the end of last year, I closed a company that took me 4.5 years.
Oh, wow.
So, and I mean, again, there was a lot going on in 4.5 years. We went through COVID. We had all kinds of things going on. There was a lawsuit in the company. We've had, a history, but we stuck through and got it closed no matter what.
Yeah. So let's talk about kind of like the biggest deal. What was your biggest deal?
Right now we're about $23 million.
Yeah, that was the biggest deal. That was the EBITDA, or is that top?
No,
that's EBITDA.
No, we work with companies that are anywhere within $1 million to $4 million EBITDA. So we're $25 to $28 million. That's kind of where we tap off. That goes into more of an investment banking realm behind that. So our sweet spot is like a $5 million, $6 million, $4 million transaction. That's our sweet spot. But we've done deals all the way up to 20 plus.
Yeah, and tell me about like one of the best deals that you did. Like, what were the characteristics of a good deal? It's the short time, the documents were clean. It was a great valuation. What is that?
I like this business because every transaction is unique, right? So everything is unique. What makes a good deal is very clean financials and very organized seller, right? Those are like the top priority. When you have
and if it doesn't have organized financials, what do you? I mean, do you assign a forensic accountant to it and say clean it up?
We have to, right? So obviously we can't spend our sellers money. We can always advise them, but we would absolutely refer somebody that interim CFO or a bookkeeping firm or financial, anything that could really straighten up. Sometimes the reason our sales cycles are long is because when we get into the point of a conversation where, hey, what are my exit options? Well, your exit options right now suck because all these things are not done. So we got to take a break. Let you.
Is that what you actually said?
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to be honest because I don't want to waste my time. We're commission based, and I want to be honest. I mean, this is where we are. If you're not ready, and this is what your company is valued right now. Just had this conversation recently. This is what the value of your company now. I understand that's not what you're looking for, but this is why. And here are the things and here are the advisors and people that you need to bring in to really develop a company to a value that you want. And financials, having the clarity on financials is a must. I just had
Go ahead.
I just had a closing. We sold a company 27% over valuation, right? Extremely well organized seller, extremely well organized financials. Not extremely big company, but really well organized seller that helped bring multiple offers on the table, and
it went into an auction.
And it went into an auction, but really it got to a buyer who was ready to take this company on to the next level. He or she, they don't need to be worrying about restructuring. Nobody wants to buy a fixer upper, at least me. I don't want to be dealing with a fixer upper. I want a good company that creates great value, great cash flow on a repeated basis, right? That's kind of the target here, and he was able to demonstrate that.
And that's kind of the opposite of that. Is there worse deals? Do you take on clients like that?
Well, I mean, I do. Unfortunately, sometimes I do take on, and they become problematic at times. It takes a lot longer to sell those, and take a lot longer to finance them as well from a buyer perspective. It limits some of the prospecting buyers that we're able to bring to the table. Obviously, that's different groups are looking for different size companies. So it absolutely makes a difference. But we do take on. We would love to first give options, but when we're taking on a client that is less properly structured, our valuation is properly adjusted. Right.
Yeah. What is the hardest part of that? Is it the valuation with the owner? I mean, because everybody owner thinks that their business is worth more than it is.
Yeah,
I haven't seen anybody go, "Hey, it's only worth 1x EBITDA."
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. And then you get the other spectrum. Like, well, I looked up on Google and it says 5 times revenue. Like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know.
And sorry to make a joke on your point, but 1x EBITDA, it was a grocery store distribution business.
Yeah. Great. I mean, you first have to explain what the EBITDA is, because you run a report, a P&L report. You don't have a EBITDA. QuickBooks doesn't give you EBITDA. You got to break it down, and especially when you have a rent or property that is owned by the owners. Now you're starting adjusting everything, and different things happen when you start diving into the numbers. But that's the nature of the game. I mean, there's options always there. I always tell sellers that when you're looking at the multiple, because everybody now is like, what's my multiple? What's my multiple?
What's the multiple? It's not discount cash flow analysis. It's the multiple. It's the comps.
Yeah. What's my multiple? Well, and I always tell them, well, the multiple is a range. There's a low, and then there's the high. It depends where are you on that range of the values. It could be either or, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Yeah. So what do you take a look at these companies when you say M&A advisor? You become an M&A advisor, goes, well, you're not going to get the price you would like to get, but if you do these 5 things, we can do it. We can get you there and sell 2 to 3 years. Is that what you do also?
Yeah. So I don't do exit planning. I don't have the temper for it, and I try not to concentrate on it as well. I like to refer people who are good at these things. I'm really great at the transaction side. So if we have a conversation with a prospect that the client doesn't have good financial record, or sometimes they can't pull up a balance sheet. Well, I'm an LLC. Oh, okay, where's your balance sheet? Well, we haven't reconciled our books ever. Well, let me refer. Let me give you some contacts who you need to talk to, so they can do that, because you're unsellable at this point. And I mean, I was when I started, it was hard for me to tell the truth. Now it's like it's fly off my tongue, like no problem.
Yeah. What do you have a background in the language of business accounting, or did you just learn it over the years?
Well, I graduated as a bachelor of finance, so I have.
Oh, there you go.
And I really didn't understand how the balance sheet of P&Ls really worked until I bought my first company, and then everything clicked. Everything clicked when I started counting.
I got to turn these assets into cash flow a lot of times.
Yeah. And, it all clicked. So yeah, I know people say that college isn't is not the best option, but I think business school gives a lot of great, credible information. And I think it helped me. I mean, I know it helped me along the way to be a lot more knowledgeable, for sure.
What about the weirdest deal? What's kind of the weirdest deal that you've done?
Oh boy, I mean the weirdest deal. I mean, I've sold a fertilizer manufacturing company. That was an interesting business. It was literally a fertilizer manufacturing company in multiple states. So we had to deal with the state environmental commission, and it was extensive business. And what's interesting is I learned how the farming actually worked, because they would sell fertilizers to farm. And what interesting was that the farmers don't pay on time ever. No one. And like typically they're not able to pay within terms, because they're waiting to harvest the season and then they get paid. So there's
God, the cash flow with farmers, it's just dead cash flow, cash flow. It's crazy.
Yeah. So this fertilizer company, they charge them an interest to carry their receivables. And that was a big line item in their income statement of interest earned, and that was the most interesting part of the business. It was really complicated. We sold it to a publicly traded company, which didn't make things easy as well. But I also
So how do you find how do you find the fit? Like, if you found, I mean, is it just kind of legwork? If I had an HVAC company doing $4 million in EBITDA, so claimed, I'm just going to go find private equity companies that are buying HVAC companies.
Sorry, you froze for a second, John. Apologize.
Yeah, let me write that timestamp down. Finding buyers. How do you find the buyers?
So there's 3 different ways that we use to find buyers. Obviously, we'll advertise on all the big platforms. We're depending on the size of the company, big databases. But the majority of our buyers come from.
What do you mean
the
platforms?
Research, right?
You
So
talking
we'll
about like
out,
Data Axle and things like that, or what?
Yeah,
or
yeah,
Axle,
Data Axle, Axial, Biz by Sell works great on some industries. Businessforsale.com. They're all kind of we're everywhere, and we post on these sites. But strategically, really, the core of our search process for finding the right buyer is understanding who would be the best buyer for this particular seller, right? So we're trying to understand who would really overpay or pay the top value for the company. Is my client, the seller, good enough that it could be a platform? Is this a good add-on? Would we get value more for cross-selling different services, right? So we try to really establish a profile of what would be the ideal buyer, and then we go out and we create a database of companies that we feel would be great. So I'll give you an example. If we're working with an HVAC company, yes, absolutely, other HVAC company would be a great acquisition target. But hey, what are the private equity firms that are currently owning HVAC companies in this space? Is this a good platform company? Are we able to find a PE firm that would establish themselves as a platform company with us? Like it's all going to depend. Is this a better company to sell to plumbing, to electrical? Are they able to cross sell different services? Is there a specific niche that they perform in their industry that others could do? Like, for example, I have an electrical safety company that really looking forward to buying electrical service companies because they need boots on the ground. Like we're trying to really figure out what would be the best match, either to cross sell services or setting this up as a platform. And then we really establish a list of our prospects, establish a list of our targets, and we go all at them. We also
Did you write an algorithm for that, or kind of like spit it out? Yeah, like hey,
it's not. There's no algorithm for it. We have databases that we use to find private equity firms specific to the industry. We have databases that we find as companies in the industries that are in geographic area that we want to target with the revenue number. So we have different buckets that we go out to finding these. Finding the prospects is not a problem. It's really the experience of identifying who should we be targeting. Right? That's the legwork. That's talking to the business owner and the seller on really figuring out what are kinds of services they do, what kind of services do they outsource, what kind of services are they the best fit for in our strategic growth. That's
and what number should that be? Like, how many people should you have as casting a wide net? 500?
I mean, 500 is a lot because we do a lot of hand battle. Like we pick up the calls, we're sending out emails. We try to start with 150 list of prospects, and we do also have a list of 7,000 buyers in our database too, because our database is all automated. Everything we do, we have a big database from all these years of being in the business of companies that will be a good fit, and that's usually our first step.
I want to ask you a lot about, and this is confusing because I've done some consulting with a guy that does a little M&A advisement in the digital world. Is about looking at offers, really analyzing these offers to where it's good, not only disqualifying some of these ones, but like the ones that don't have any backing or commitment from a financier, to, what does the payout look like up front, over time, kind of thing.
So you were asking a question on how do you assess the offer?
Yeah, it's about offers, right? I've done a little consulting for somebody that in the M&A world for digital companies, and we look at that. We look at the offers, whether they have financing backed them, and like commitment from some kind of investment bank or a lender, to what does the payout look like? Is it upfront, over time, and which is actually a better offer, right? It could be a lower upfront, but a bigger payout over time. Like,
Right.
how do you put your, like, hey, seller, this is the best offer for you?
Yep. It's a great question. That's why, again, this is an interesting industry. No offer is the same. There's always different caveats, and it's always good to talk about and break those offers down. In my experience, money is usually not the first thing on the seller's agenda, right? I'm working with clients who are 30 plus, 20 plus years running the business. That's a legacy business for them. There's a lot more than money. Obviously, money is top top three, but there's other things that goes into it, right? Does the seller have to be employed? If so, what's the transition time going to look like? What is that employment going to look like? What about the key employees? What about the family members if they're in the business? Like, there's so many different things that goes into the offer that obviously needs to be negotiated and worked out. But you absolutely have to look through it. What I like to do when you have multiple people, and I'm like giving away all my secrets, John, here. But what I like to do.
That's what this podcast is about.
Can't believe it. I can't believe I fell for this. Fell for this thing. But what I like to do is because you get, sometimes you get offers that are completely left field. Like you could spend time negotiating a deal, and then you get an offer and you're like, wow. Like, I just spent 2 months of going back and forth on exactly what. So what I like to do is I really run this very good structure of offer. And what I like to do is I like to ask the prospecting buyers, not to get crazy with the letter of intent, but really send me a non-binding indication of interest over email. That's how I like to do it. That gives me a lot of flavor and what is there to come. So when I get a non-binding indication of interest over email, and I tell them, hey, just write non-binding in the subject line. I don't want this to be turned into the LOI. I just want to make sure that we can meet halfway, so we don't spend 100 different times going back and forth with our attorneys. Let's just figure out where we stand. So I asked the non-binding indication of interest that can really signify as if we have a buyer that makes sense for us to move forward, or we don't. And that's how I get started with my offers. And then obviously when I get back to the buyer and tell them, hey, this is what will work, this is not going to work, this is what we're looking to see in the offer. If you can move this forward into the LOI, I think we can make this work. So by the time I actually get the LOI, it's already better than if it's better at the beginning models if I would just be asking for a lot of intents. So I'm really trying to get the buyer to negotiate a little bit with themselves, but really to come to a term where we can actually make an agreement. But a lot of things will need to be negotiated. Like I said, what's going to be the employment agreement? What about the working capital? That's a big question. Always a big question, right? Especially like I have a company right now I'm representing. Their receivables is a lot higher than the current liability. So what's going to be the working capital? Is it going to be excluded? Is it going to be included? How's the
what kind of business is
purchase price is broken down? Do we have financing? Is it all cash up front? Like, I really try to get it all down on the LOI. I'm not trying to negotiate the whole world, but we need to know all the top figures, and we go forward with the recommendation, obviously with what the seller and my client wishes. But my recommendation is always, what's the likelihood and probability of this actually succeeding in the short term time, and what is going to be that payout at the end, and how does it work for the seller? Because taxes is also a big question, right?
Yeah,
sometimes
huge.
if you save on taxes, that could be a big deal for the business owner. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But you should negotiate all up front.
Let me ask you about that working capital again, because and you've sold small businesses, you were small businesses. It's like very common if you see a seller always wants the working capital.
Yep.
You move up the ladder in revenue, working capital comes with the business because it's a lifeblood. Why do they do that? Why do they like what? I know they do it. Really can't change the behavior. What do you say about it?
Well, what in our it also depends what kind of business it is, right? In our experience, working capital on the small size deals just not included as part of the transactions. There's just not enough money in the deal to include the working capital in the business. And you have private equity firms that come, and you see this now, where you have a lot of private equity that ultimately reducing their requirements. They started at $3 million EBITDA, and slowly they're crawling back down to levels that are a little bit more receptive, and they come in with their offers. Working capital is included, and by the way, we'll figure it out later. Oh, hold on, like, what do you mean later? Like, we gotta talk about this. What numbers are gonna look like? So on the small size deals, working capital typically are not included, but again, it's all subject to negotiation. On the larger deals, you got to get that working capital in. You just can't do that without.
Yeah, like
But
a
also
cash
the
crunch
multiples,
day one. Right.
yeah, and also the multiples are higher. Once as the EBITDA level goes up, so do the multiples, and that accounts for some of that working capital to be in there. And again, it all depends on deals. But I worked around it, and I've made transactions where, yes, working capital not included, but let's include first 200,000-300,000 of accounts receivables as part of the purchase price, so that you can finance this as an acquisition of one, and then first 200,000-300,000 of accounts receivables, you are able to use it as a working capital moving forward. We'll roll that into the loan, right? So there's ways of mitigating through it.
Yeah, and when do you see that accounts receivable between, an aging report? If you see something where it's turning faster, but the receivables are old, and you go, it's out 90 days. We're turning every 30 days. That's kind of a problem, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're going to write that off, probably.
Right. So typically in the small size transactions, receivable stays with the seller, right? And I'm talking about smaller size transactions on that front. And then
$1 million and below businesses. It's kind of smaller, but
right. The receivable stays with the seller, and obviously that's concerning when you have 90 plus days in receivable. So what exactly is going on? And you typically see that when you have a lot of customer concentration or manufacturing. Especially now, I'm dealing with some manufacturing company that for some reason that receivable number just keep on rising, and then that's a big question, because if it's a large enough number, well, from what year of receivables is this from? How right is how much hurt does it and unleashes on the financials for previous years? Should you remove that from the numbers? Like what's the 90 plus is what? Right? So you gotta
yeah, I looked at a medical manufacturing business, husband wife team. The revenue looked good, but their receivables was a year to 2 years out. Like they were afraid to call to collect money.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy, and unfortunately, that hurts the bottom line. I see the opposite side. You see payables and liabilities out of control, and I have presented the valuation 2 weeks ago to a prospective seller with a negative valuation, because we provide them the enterprise value for the company. We also provide them with their seller proceeds, and their seller proceeds was negative. They had way too much debt on the company. So the question is what are we walking away with? Well, you're gonna have to pay.
Sounds like a great time not to sell.
Yeah, and I mean, again, they borrowed a lot of money from EIDL. They bought the real estate that they shouldn't buy. They've done a lot of things without really getting advice, and I think they were trying to get this company ready for the sale, but they
It didn't help.
they,
Whatever they were doing, wrong advice.
yeah, because
Let me kind of move it over to the industry itself. What could somebody in the M&A industry, like an associate or an owner of the business, like both of them, what could they make in this business?
like a
I mean,
business.
let me kind of, the first question is, I know that the commissions for transactions on SMBs is from 10 to 15%.
Yes.
What is it for M&A? Is like 5% or smaller? It gets
Yeah,
moves
so we're
up.
on the Lehman scale. So we're 10.
Lehman's, yeah.
Yeah, so we're 10% in the first million, and then it drops down. So if we're doing the $20 million transaction, our percentage is like 2.5, 2.6 on it. But that's that's not typical. Our typical transaction size, we make 7 to 8% of commission on the transaction. So everybody, most people
Yeah. And so,
that
what
are
would
on my
like an
team that are,
associate that came and said, "Hey, I
sorry about that.
oh, what would an associate come in and say, "Hey, I don't want to be I don't want to own a business anymore because I'm not going to manage employees anymore, but I love to buy and sell businesses." What could somebody come in and do?
Yeah, so you can easily, I shouldn't say easily, because this is a lot of hard work, and if you have time, right? Because it's a big sales cycle, long sales cycle. So if you are able to withstand 12 months, 12 to 18 months to build up your pool of prospects that you're working with, you can be making six-figure income. You can be making $150,000 to $200,000 doing this. It's a lot of ups and downs in this business. You could have transactions at the beginning of the year and not have a lot of transactions towards the end of the year. So you got to be good with money, but really you have to spend 12 to 18 months in the period of time gathering, getting leads and tractions. You got to be networking. You got to be networking with CPAs. You got to be networking with financial planners. You got to be joining the groups. You got to be doing marketing for yourself and establishing yourself as someone who is experienced in the space. Obviously, the folks that I work with, they are able to bring me in a lot of the transactions. I have a lot of experience, and I help them along the way to close these transactions and help them move along in their specter. Um, uh, the smaller the deals, the more complicated they get. Believe it or not, like $100,000 deal could be more complex than $2 million
Oh,
transaction.
they're just much more messier. I mean,
It's
it's
just so
because
much. You gotta be
they're
creative.
shoebox kind of deal. Like, well, how do I verify that revenue? I mean, it's going to be kind of a waste of time to try to put this out to the market, and
Yeah,
we don't know if you're making what you say you're making. I don't know.
right.
Yeah.
Right. The best brokers and M&A advisors are, in my experience, are the ones who actually own the company and sold their company, and now they're in the point where, like, I understand how this game works. I want to do this. We
Yeah.
have few of these folks in ROI that are hitting it off the board.
Do you just sell in Boston, or is it United States wide?
So we're nationally. We COVID really helped us spread out. We used to meet in the office conference room for sales meetings. Now we're on Zoom. So there's and it's also made it easier for our clients to get on Zoom. It used to be a problem. It used to be all face to face. Now a lot of our conversations are like, I do meetings on Zoom every single day, and that made it easier. So yeah, we do all over the place. I have a transaction in California that we do. I have a broker who is relocated from Maine in Washington State on the West Coast. We have a buy side representation now in Georgia, working on the southern portion of the state. So, but obviously New England is a bread and butter for us, and this is where a lot of our business come from.
Beautiful. Dennis, thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
No, I appreciate the invite. I had fun.
Almost on the hour. So let me stop it here.